We are live. Welcome back. This is episode number 34 of Calibrated with Scott. I'm Scott, of course. I really appreciate everyone who listens, and I thank you so much. If you guys could just like and subscribe, it just shows me that you're listening and that you care, and it helps me a lot. And it's just a free, easy way that you can support me if you enjoy my work. Make sure you guys also follow me on Twitter and over on Telegram. You can see those in the bottom corner of the little display screen. Today I'm going to try a slightly different format for these podcasts, at least the video that you guys are watching. I'm going to be throwing up some visual aids to help you understand what I'm talking about. I know it can be kind of confusing sometimes when I'm just abstractly talking about a city or place and, I'm giving specific locations. I'm looking at a map all day. I look at these maps 5, 10 times a day, waiting for updates and so on. So I know what I'm talking about and I talk about it very precisely, but you guys might not understand. So, yeah, I'm just going to be putting some of the maps that I use and some of the maps that I've created up to show you what I'm talking about and what I'm referencing. And I'm going to do that right now. And the first one is going to be actually of the very western edge of Bakhmut, very zoomed in. You can see Kromove right there, which if you guys wanted to look that up, so you have your own visual aid, you can understand where on the map I'm talking about. This is in the city of Bakhmut, where the primary focus of the Ukrainian conflict is occurring right now. We have back and forth positional fighting. The Ukrainians have captured some territory on the flanks, while the Russians continue to push through the center of the city, which is an important aspect of this whole thing. If you do look at the map, you will see a little red square. The little red square with the arrow going into it, that is probably the single most important section of Bakhmut right now. It's on the intersection that the 0506 runs out towards Kromove west and then towards Chasiv Yar. This intersection is of vital importance, and the reason I put a box around it is because there is now fighting in this section. So the Russians are at that road, and that is bad news for the AFU in the city. If you look at the trapezoid, the red trapezoid sort of right next to that square, you'll see that's the Citadel. The Citadel is now almost completely in the gray zone or under Russian control. This is the high-rise commie block that the Ukrainians have been using very successfully to defend the city and extend the fighting. Basically, since May, they've been sitting in the Citadel, holding it and using it to their advantage. So that is now collapsing. The rest of the city to the south, you can see two little arrows that are coming in, the red. That whole area is pretty urban, except right at the very bottom where the blue arrow is coming out of, that is an industrial zone. You will see 3 blue arrows coming out, and this is because I'm suspecting that either it's occurring right now because Russian progress has been so consistent and large, which is rather unusual for the urban fighting that we've been seeing in Bakhmut. It's been 100 meters a day, maybe. And now we're seeing 200, 300, 400 meter sections and huge sections coming under Russian control. So the progress is increasing, which suggests to me that there are fewer and fewer elite and fewer in general Ukrainian soldiers in the city. So I think that they've pulled out a good portion. I think that they have done a successful deblocking operation, which I'm really going to show you. The last thing I wanted to show you on this map is if you look at Kromove, I have 2 defensive barriers set up there, and it's vital that the Ukrainians leave a force here that can hold this edge of Kromove for long enough for everybody in the south to get out to Ivanivsky, so that they don't get routed through the fields, which would be bad. After that, though, I'm pretty sure Kromove is going to fall, and that's when I'm going to take you to my other picture where we can, you'll zoom out. It's still Bakhmut, so at the very center is what you were just looking at on a separate mapping website from the ISW. This is from Rybar. And on this map, you can see a ginormous red line that cuts right from the top edge of this littler salient around Bakhmut to right below or right next to Ivanivsky. This is what I think the new Russian front line is going to be in this area. after Bakhmut falls. I think they're going to push up basically to the area where they just close enough where they can't be fired at with rifles and ATGMs from Ivanivsky very easily. So 500 meters to 1,000 meters, maybe not ATGMs. ATGMs would still be able to hit them, but rifle fire, at that range is going to be a lot more difficult. And at about 2,000 meters, 3,000 meters, you probably won't be able to see people if they're lying in defilade. So that seems like the appropriate area where the line will stabilize. If you can see the blue arrows are the Ukrainians with retreating, and if you look at the yellow is actually very important. These two areas are they're both on the 0506 and 0504, the 0504 highways in the south and the 0506 highways in the north. They had to deblock these to secure the withdrawal. Uh, if you know where the Russian control was recently, it was far more than that yellow box on the in the north, which was the very threatening part of the salient. The yellow box in the south is a hill in the area, which the Ukrainians now control, which is important. And it'll be important for the next defense, the defense of Ivanivsky and the defense of Chasiv Yar. So this whole Ukrainian offensive on Bakhmut is not really a Ukrainian offensive. They're not coming from the right direction. They're not hitting simultaneously on both sides. These are just simple deblocking operations to secure a withdrawal from the city. And they succeeded. They did their job. They lost a good number of very qualified and highly motivated Azov fighters and other elite fighting units to secure this territory. And there was a lot of talk about Russian retreats too, and the Russians did. They retreated, but they didn't just throw their guns down and run away. They sat and fought for like 3 to 5 hours, which is a pretty intense firefight duration. At which point they retreated after the Ukrainians threw enough numbers at the Russians that there was no point in holding the territory anymore. There's two different styles of fighting that you're seeing in this conflict. The Russians are casualty adverse and they will give up territory to save lives. And that's just the way that they fought this whole time. And, the other side considers that weakness because the Ukrainians will never retreat from anywhere. I mean, you can look at Bakhmut, they're holding on to 2% of a city and just feeding men and material into it for months. Just for what purpose? There was really none. The Russians weren't being attrited at some insane rate. People, the pro-Ukrainian crowd will say that, but then they won't be able to prove it at all. And then that's not to say that the Russians aren't taking losses. It's just not irreplaceable losses. They can manage the amount of losses that they're occurring. The Ukrainians are incurring more losses in the city of both men and material for a longer time, and they weren't gaining anything. The Russians will have the city at the end. The Ukrainians are not. They talk about it being a stall tactic, but now the Ukrainians are saying that they aren't ready to go on the offensive. So there's a lot going on here. But that kind of wraps up Bakhmut for right now. We're just waiting to see over the next couple of days. Some people are saying the Ukrainians are beginning to withdraw. Some people are saying they're not. I honestly don't think it matters either way. They're either going to get pushed out and all be killed, or they're going to withdraw and then they don't die. So it seems like a pretty simple decision to me. And it seems pretty obvious because the Ukrainians have already gone on these deblocking operations. So if they don't withdraw, that will be a waste, and then that'll be humiliating. I don't see why they wasted men to capture these areas and then to just continue to hold the city. That would speak to the absolute delusion of the Kiev government if they think that they are going to be able to hold Bakhmut or recapture it. It's just the folly of man, really. Honestly, it's pretty crazy. Another topic that I wanted to talk about, getting away from the actual combat, uh, is a strike we saw um, about, oh, I want to say it was Saturday night in Ukraine. Um, there was a large Garen 2 launch. A bunch of the drones went towards Western Ukraine, which, uh, shouldn't really be happening because the Ukrainian air defense should be able to take down these drones. They're slow moving. They're out in the open. They there's just it should not be happening. These drones should not be getting to the western parts of the country. And there was an actual hit in one of the western oblasts, and I'm looking for it right now. The name of it. Okay, I'm gonna butcher this because I've actually never heard this said out loud, but Kamel Kamelinitsky. Uh, it's just an oblast in western Ukraine, pretty close to Lvov, and they had a massive explosion occur. It ripped apart this entire ammo storage position, and I'm going to put that on the screen right now as another visual aid. Just the before and after satellite images. Here is the before, and then here's the after. As you can see, the entire territory got absolutely upturned. I mean, there's no buildings left standing. If you look at the closer satellite images, like the clearer ones pre-explosion, you can see that there are multiple highly upkept buildings. There's also a rail station in the facility. A rail line comes through it. So this could have been multiple things. There could have been a train stopped at the station that was hit. There could have been ammo being stored in this area. Um, the Ukrainian side is saying that it was all old Soviet munitions that have just been sitting in there forever, and I don't buy that. I think that when you're in a war, you're going to use anything and everything you can. I think a lot of the major ammunition storage sites are not. I mean, anything in the West can be protected, at least to some degree. And these ammunition storage facilities are designed to maintain ammunition. I mean, it's what they do. So, could there have been old Soviet munitions in this place? Of course. I mean, that's what it was built for. So, yes, that could definitely be the case. But my question is, why did the Russians hit it? They had to have seen something on satellite images, some movement, something that gives them an indication that, oh, we need to take this out. If we hit this, we're going to do some damage. So they sent drones and they hit it. And I'm also going to put up the video of the explosion because the explosion was, pretty massive. And so I'll put that up while I'm talking about it. But in the video, you can see at least in the video that I'm going to post, you can see the first main second detonation of ammunition. So a Garen 2 has a 50 kg warhead, very tiny, flew in, hit this building. The building detonated, blew up, and then subsequently other buildings in the facility blew up that were holding other ammunitions. There was gamma radiation spike after the explosion, which, around the time of the explosion, I'm not exactly sure. It was on the day of the explosion, which was, very suspicious. It was an outlying number, but it doesn't necessarily mean that anything radioactive went up. A lot of the theory, the biggest theory right now is that there was the depleted uranium munitions being stored there, which would make sense. These are sensitive munitions that you want to keep in a very sensitive location to protect them. They probably thought that the Russians, either wouldn't have the intel to know what was in this place, or they wouldn't be able to have the means to hit it. Uh, Obviously, they did. They destroyed it, and that radiation spike hit. I mean, they have detectors all over the country. Being a country with nuclear power plants, it's kind of like the regulation. So they have them, and we saw a spike, and it's not confirmation of anything. But then we also today got a warning on pro-Ukrainian pages for that oblast commits. I can never say it, but you know what I'm talking about. We got a thing for that, an alert for that oblast saying don't drink the water. There's going to be some maintenance going on with it, or there's some chlorination or something happening. Just very suspicious timing. It's very odd. Iodine tablets are selling out in the region, and you know that also can just be people fear buying. So you gotta obviously play devil's advocate with yourself, but it's a lot of very strange coincidences after a very impressive explosion. So that is uh, one of the strikes. We've had continued strikes over the past like week. Basically, we've had Garens going up, Garen 2, the kamikaze drones going up every night. We have missiles flying in. We have a lot of what it looks like to me is EW mixed with decoys, finding where radars and air defense systems are being moved to. And that's important because we recently had something go very bad. Well, I say the Russians had something go very bad with their. I don't know what it was. With the information hasn't been released yet. I don't know if it ever will be. But in one day, the Russians lost a Su-35, an Su-34, and two Mi-8 helicopters in the Bryansk region, Bryansk region or Bryansk of Russia. And this is right by the Sumy and Chernigov regions. Um, the the loss of these is a statistical outlier, right? You're seeing four aerial vehicles going down in the same area at the same time, which instantly makes you think it was an operation. Uh, to me, it looks like Ukrainian air defense was brought close to the border because the Russian glide bomb attacks have become so vigorous in this region, and there's almost no protection because there was nothing of, I don't think, vital enough importance that the Russians would expend missiles on it, so they didn't really need to position air defenses in the region. But now that there's glide bombs, they have to create a buffer to keep planes at bay. So they brought in these air defense systems, and then uh, I don't know, just an intelligence failure on some level. The Russian pilots didn't get a memo that said that they need to, fly lower and further back, or just be cautious of enemy radar. Um, but they flew normal sorties like they have been for probably the past 5 6 months, and they were shot down, and all of the pilots and crews died. And it was a very big deal. It was a black day for the Russian Air Force, but you know, not the end of the world. The Russian Air Force is 97% intact since the beginning of the conflict, I would say, probably, and they've been building replacements. So there's not a lot of attrition to the Russian Air Force going on at the same rate of other things like their land forces. So this loss is not like changing the war. And I think that it was also, Ukrainians, like a Ukrainian plan that succeeded, but now it's not going to happen again. You wouldn't think, right? The Russians have seen this play now, and they know that the air defense has been moved up. So right immediately after this event came the strike in the west on the ammunition depot, and there were multiple days of Guarantees hitting locations in Lvov, all over the West, Vinnytsia, all over they were hitting. So it was it's been a very dynamic day, or weekend, just in terms of the sorties that have been going on back and forth. We've also seen Storm Shadow missiles being used now. We have it confirmed because we have pieces on Luhansk, and also previously unannounced American decoy missiles that are fired, that you know, jam up radar and distract air defense from the actual Groms or Tochkas or now Storm Shadow cruise missiles that are flying around. The Russians also have claimed to have shot one down, but they show debris that it could be from the missile hitting its target too. So I haven't seen any confirmation of a shoot down. It would not surprise me. I mean, they can shoot down cruise missiles. The Storm Shadow is not anything particularly special when it comes to shooting it down. It can be shot down by multiple different systems, both Russian and American, East and West. So it's not a game changer. There's not enough of them coming in that's gonna, it's something that you should be like hyper concerned about if you're pro-Russian. But it's not. I mean, it is there, and it's something that's going to be hitting targets just like HIMARS did at the beginning of the conflict. I did want to move into some questions. I posted a thing on my Telegram, just a post so that I could gather Q&A for this podcast specifically. And if you guys want to, if you guys ask a question, if you donate a super chat, I will put it in the podcast. I'll answer it on the podcast if it's appropriate. And I'll also do it that way, or you guys can come on my Telegram, and sometimes I'll put Q&As up, and you can go on there and ask a question or bring up a topic. Somebody wants to know about World War III. I think this is a fine topic to talk about because I don't think people really grasp or understand what World War III means. The idea of mutually assured destruction through the use of nuclear weapons means that it will never be a World War III, and if there is, there will never really be a World War III, right? It'll just be an extinction event. It won't be a war, basically, probably, right? So I think that there's going to be extensive proxy wars where, just like Ukraine, one side is funding a movement or a government against another government. Just like in the Cold War, I think that's what we're kind of getting back to, except now you have different power centers, which is going to be interesting to see how that plays out. I would expect somewhere like Africa or potentially Southeast Asia to become a potential war zone through proxies and different things like that. It's just, I've never seen the world so close, like on the precipice. I don't think anybody who was born post, Berlin Wall coming down has ever experienced anything like that, like this. Probably not since the Cuban Missile Crisis. I mean, we're almost that close. It is right there, and I don't think people really understand that. So there could be a third world war, but you won't really have to worry about it if there is one. You're going to have a lot of other problems to focus on. So let me go through these and see if I can find one. Helicopters for Lev. I'm supposed to talk about helicopters. And you guys might not know these people, but these are some of my hardcore listeners and friends. Kat, I will bring Hades on next time. Let's see. Oh, here's one. I have some of these questions, and I'm going to put some of these to rest. I talked about why the Russians are oh, no, sorry. Why are the Russians not adequately retaliating to sanctions? This is a great question. Sanctions are a double-edged sword. The Russian goal, right, was from the bat was not to go to war with the West. That's not what they wanted. Their goal was to survive the onslaught of Western sanctions and Western pressure and potential isolation and come out the other side. And then you can start thinking about how you're going to react. They're still in that bubble where they're recovering. Their things are looking good, but they're not out of it yet. So they need to fully stabilize. Then after they fully stabilize, probably Russia and China will mutually do some sort of sanctioning eventually, as the U.S. will most likely continue to escalate with both of these countries. Um, let's see. Low morale of Russian troops. I haven't seen low morale of Russian troops. I don't know what we're talking about here. I don't see. I see guys having fun. The Chechens are always laughing, having a great time. I don't see the proof of low morale. If you're talking about Russian troops retreating, that's a possibility, right? Like, but retreat doesn't mean your morale is low. Retreat can be an order. Retreat can be a necessity. That doesn't, sitting in a trench and dying doesn't mean you have high morale. It means you're scared of retreating. That's what it means. And the Russians aren't fighting an existential war in Ukraine right now, like it's on their territory, like the Ukrainians are. So the Ukrainian idea is not one step back. The invaders must be removed. For the Russians, they're like, we're just trying to fight this battle in the way that gets the least number of Russians killed and probably the least number of Ukrainians killed. I mean, honestly, in the beginning, that's how it seemed. They were, it was very, very, uh, I don't even know how to explain it. They went in very soft-handed, which, kind of came back and bit them a little bit. But hey, they went in and they preserved human life. I can't knock them for that. Why isn't Russia seeing newly captured territories as not fully Russian? Um, I don't I don't know if they are. I mean, you're seeing attacks on Russian soil regularly, and the Russians are not reacting the same way that everybody wants them to and expects them to. I think the Russians have a game plan. I think that they know that what the West wants is retaliation. They want escalation. They want something to use against Russia, and Russia's not going to give it to them. They're going to keep doing what they're doing, and they're not going to let the enemy force them to make decisions that they don't want to make. I think it's smart, and I think it will pay off in the long run. And it's paying off geopolitically. Everybody's looking at Russia getting fucking smacked in the face, getting literally a bomb going off over the Kremlin next to the Russian flag, and Russia just didn't do anything. And it's not weakness because they could have done something. I think weakness would have been overreacting too quickly. What did that really cause? What damage does it cause? None. I mean, ego hit a little bit, but it's not the end of the world. And the rest of the world just goes, wow, did Ukraine really just fly explosives over the Kremlin and detonate it? Why? What did that accomplish for the Ukraine? It just made them look bad. So, I mean, it's a small win for them, maybe domestically, for the really, gung ho supporters, but it has no, it gained them nothing. It actually probably worsened their position with Washington because now Washington is seen as supporting not a defensive war, but an aggressive war against the Kremlin, and it gives the Kremlin credibility in the position. The Kremlin can sit back and go, I mean, they just attacked us. Of course, we had to start the SMO. It was the only way. And people are going to say, well, they wouldn't have attacked. It doesn't matter what it doesn't matter if they wouldn't have it. If not, it happened. It just happened. It doesn't matter. It happened. That's all the people know. So that's where that's how I'll answer that question, at least. And that looks like that's about it. If you guys have, like I said, questions, super chats are the best way to do it. I don't check comments as frequently on YouTube. just because I'm constantly doing stuff on Telegram and Twitter, come over there. The conversation's very nice. Just make sure you guys like and subscribe. And thank you so much for listening to this new and improved episode 34 of Calibrated. Thank you all so much and have a great day.